Do Jeremy Swayman and the Boston Bruins have a new deal as training camp is set to begin today? That's just one of the big questions we'll tackle here on this Locked On Boston Bruins training camp preview.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Wednesday, September 18th. Happy training camp day to all who are celebrating. And I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Before we get started, a quick reminder to follow along on socials at LockedNHL Bruins and at Ian C. McLaren. Bussi's so excited about training camp. She's making an appearance on the podcast today. And there is rumblings out there that perhaps Jeremy Swayman is set to sign a new deal. As I record right now, there is nothing confirmed, but Ty Anderson of 98.5 last night said, expect some news soonish. Courtney Cox of WEEI saying this morning that a deal is done. There are reports out there that it may be somewhere in the $8.5 million range. But of course, that would be huge for the Bruins to get that done before the Bruins take to the ice for training camp tomorrow. Today is a lot of off-ice stuff. Jim Montgomery, Don Sweeney will be addressing the media around noon. So tomorrow we'll bring you all that we learned from then, as well as hopefully a breakdown of the new Jeremy Swayman contract. And this is a reminder to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get the breaking news, updates, and instant reactions over there. But Swayman is one part of the goaltending equation for this season. And of course, there are big questions about who will back him up and whether or not they could carry three goalies out of training camp. Don't forget, both Brandon Bussi and Joonas Korpisalo require waivers to be sent down to the AHL. So, what do you think is more likely? That Joonas Korpisalo, who's a veteran later on in his career, coming off a very down season for the Ottawa Senators, is it more likely that he would be claimed on waivers, or a guy like Brandon Bussi, who's 26? He's had very strong numbers at the AHL level and appears to be in line for a promotion. Now, the Bruins do not want a Korpisalo-Bussi tandem to begin the season, of course. That would be borderline disastrous, but they could carry both if they choose not to risk losing them on waivers, or they send Korpisalo down. He's unlikely to be claimed. If he is, well, all power to whoever takes that $3 million AAV over the next 4 seasons. And there's some space cleared up to add a forward and or maybe sign Tyler Johnson, who we'll touch on later. Now, again, Korpisalo-Bussi would be a devastating tandem to begin the season with, and not in a good way. Having Swayman back is so vital to this team's success. And, of course, it was curious when the Bruins traded Linus Ullmark to the Ottawa Senators. My assumption was that it would be a cap dump in order to give Swayman a well-due raise. Instead, they traded Ullmark's $5 million contract for 1 remaining year, took on $3 million of Korpisalo's $4 million cap hit, the Ottawa Senators retaining 25% over the next 4 years. So even if Bussi emerges, they're still committed on paper to Korpisalo for 4 more years. So one of the big things here in training camp is goalie Bob working his magic, and getting Korpisalo back to the levels that he has shown he can play in the past. Korpisalo has 276 NHL appearances. Bussi, of course, has none. He's coming off an .890 save percentage in 55 games for Ottawa last season. $3 million AAV for 4 more seasons. So the chances of him being claimed are pretty minimal. Bussi, of course, is earning only $775,000 on a 1-year, 2-way deal. There would be likely a bunch of teams eager to grab him on waivers, similar to Boston losing Malcolm Subban on waivers several years ago. So Korpisalo needs to settle in with goalie coach Bob Essensa. Apparently, according to Fluto Shinzawa, Ullmark didn't feel comfortable incorporating Essensa's recommendations until halfway through his first season. And we saw how his game improved as he settled in, and then he won the Vezina Trophy in his second season with the Boston Bruins. Not to say Korpisalo is going to emerge as a Vezina candidate in Boston, but there's room for improvement, and there's a reason to believe he can be at least an average or slightly above average NHL goalie based on his numbers with Columbus and the LA Kings a couple seasons ago. So, it's very possible that Bussi opens the season as the backup. Bruins could send Korpisalo down for some seasoning to refine his game, and that the door could be open if he shows that he is up to the task in Providence. The depth and the need for additional scoring pop being what it is, I find it hard to believe that they would carry 3 goalies just to have that cap space taken up by a position that you can only play one at a time. So we'll see what the situation is. All of that, of course, is dependent on Jeremy Swayman signing quickly because we don't want him to miss too much time here in training camp so that he is fully up to speed and game ready to prove to everybody that he is going to live up to this contract that he is reportedly about to sign. Fluto's predicting a 4-year, $28 million extension. I'd love to see a longer-term deal. $8.5 million around there is what I've said for some time. I believe he will come in around in the top 5 of goaltenders, with the highest paid, of course, being Sergei Bobrovsky, and then you have Andrei Vasilevsky making $9.5 million. Connor Hellebuck's coming in at $8.5 million. Elias Sorokin at $8.25 million, and then there's a drop off to John Gibson at $6.4 million. I think you can make the argument projecting forward based on expected success and what he has done so far up to his to this point in his career that he belongs at least on par with Elias Sorokin, who does have a Vezina finalist to his name, but limited success in the playoffs. Swayman was a Jennings Trophy winner a couple years ago. Vasilevsky, Hellebuck, Bobrovsky have the Vezinas to go with their names. Vasilevsky and Bobrovsky have the cups. Hellebuck more personally decorated, so putting him in there around Sorokin, Hellebuck certainly would seem to be the right move. So that's the goaltending situation here as training camp begins. Let's take a look at the forwards here as the podcast continues. I am a huge fan of Game Time, and I use it regularly to get tickets for baseball games, for concerts, and Game Time now has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love the view from your seat. You can get a panoramic view, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at the venue. And they also have the lowest price guarantee, where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a seat in the same section and row for less. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Game Time, the best ticketing app out there. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Please do subscribe and make it a daily listen. So we've talked about the goaltending situation. Up front is probably where some of the biggest stories will be told here in training camp. Obviously, there's a new face in Elias Lindholm, and he's coming in seemingly a perfect fit on the top line alongside David Pastrnak and Pavel Zacha. Lindholm had not the greatest season offensively last year, but there's the hope that alongside a player like Pastrnak, Lindholm could regress upwards to previous standards. And back in 2018-19, while playing mostly with Johnny Gaudreau, rest in peace, of course, and Matthew Tkachuk, Lindholm scored a career-high 78 points, and he does think that he can produce points again. Obviously, last season didn't go as well as he would have liked, but he did find his game, scoring 10 points in 13 playoff games for the Canucks, and Lindholm should be a very valuable addition for the Boston Bruins. That is, I don't want to say he's the number one center that they've been looking for since Bergeron and David Krejci retired, but he's certainly better than what they've had and should certainly produce higher than what Coyle and Zacha did in their career years last year. Now, one of the biggest holes on this roster is in the top six following the departure of Jake DeBrusk. He played on that line with Marchand and Coyle, and as did Danton Heinen, who also signed with the Vancouver Canucks along with DeBrusk. Fabian Lysell will have the best opportunity to make the roster and be the Bruins' number 2 right wing. First round pick a few years ago, and we've heard time and time again that he would have made the team last year if he had not been injured late with Providence. If he can't crack it, then perhaps Morgan Geekie could be first up to play with Marchand and Coyle. Trent Frederick, I believe, is also an option. 40 points last season. Lots of upside, especially if he is able to get some power play time. I do believe Lysell will take that and run with it, and I'm excited to see him in Boston this season for sure. Where does Matt Poitras start? Last September, the 19-year-old's destination, in my mind, looked pretty clear. It was coming back here to Guelph for one more season of OHL prep, but he destroyed that plan, left Guelph, and grabbed a spot with the Bruins. This season, the spot's not as obvious. He's 20 now. He's eligible to play in the AHL. Last season, he was not. Getting reps in Providence could perhaps give him a lower pressure environment to return following pretty serious shoulder surgery last season. The first time that he has had to go through that kind of thing, a major procedure to have hockey taken away for a bit. And perhaps it would be incumbent for him to start in the AHL and work his way back in. Georgi Merkulov is another option. But, of course, there's Tyler Johnson, who has been invited to Bruins training camp on a PTO. 34-year-old scored 17 goals and 31 points in 67 games for the Chicago Blackhawks last season, not playing with Connor Bedard, which is notable because he was still able to produce in more of a depth role for the Blackhawks. A Blackhawks team, side note, that named our old friend Nick Foligno as captain. With Foligno, Taylor Hall, Tyler Bertuzzi, a lot of former Bruins vibes in Chicago. But Johnson has an opportunity to jump from Chicago to Boston if he earns a spot and if the Bruins have any leftover money following the Jeremy Swayman contract. If you put Poitras in Providence, Johnson could follow the Danton Heinen tryout to contract path. Jim Montgomery said Johnson is an incredibly intelligent, smart hockey player who's won. There's a reason players like that play a long time in this league. My feeling is that we'll have a Zacha, Lindholm, Pastrnak first line, Marchand, Coyle, Lysell second line out of camp, Frederick, Geekie, Johnson as the third line, and then the fourth line I think is pretty set with Max Jones, Johnny Beecher, and Marcus Stelic, with perhaps Riley Tufte coming in as the 13th forward, or Justin Brazeau as well coming in as a 13th forward in lieu of Kostelic if they want to bring some more skill into the lineup. With Poitras beginning the season down in the AHL, but as the first potential call-up in the event of injury or just some re-shifting on the lineup. So, yeah, that's how I see things shaking out here among the forward group, barring a complete surprise or, somebody coming in. Maybe Merkulov comes in and shows that he's undeniable talent and can't be sent down. Maybe Johnson just doesn't have it anymore, and the Bruins cut ties with him and he signs elsewhere. Maybe Poitras is just so good that they make it impossible to send him down. Maybe Lysell doesn't come in and impress like we expect him to and is sent down. These are all questions, and the forward group certainly has the most question marks, but some good players to fill things out. And I'm excited to see how things shake out among the forward group. Coming up, we're going to touch on the defense core, and we'll do that here as the podcast continues. Football season is well underway, and you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel for a good reason. It's America's #1 sportsbook. They have something a little different for you right now. Through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. There's only a few more days to get in on this deal. Put a $5 bet down at FanDuel.com and get that 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Along with Elias Lindholm, of course, there was another major addition on the Boston Bruins, and that is Nikita Zadorov. And I fully believe that we are going to love this guy the moment he steps on the ice. Big Zaddy is what I'm giving him. He doesn't want to be called Big Z out of respect for Zdeno Chara, and rightfully so. Big Zaddy kind of brings in that Z, the fact that he's big, ties into New England native Adam Sandler, Big Daddy. So that's what I'm going with. Now, Zadorov has the opportunity to play on the top pairing with Charlie McAvoy, and I do not envy any forward trying to skate in on the Bruins with those two bearing down on you. He has the ability to give anybody some of the biggest hits in the league, but he also has some offensive flair and upside as well. The second pairing, likely have Elias Lindholm and Brandon Carlo. Not a flashy pairing, but a very effective pairing. The third defensive pairing is likely going to be Mason Lohrei, who I think is going to have a breakout season here for the Boston Bruins. Offensively dynamic. Still learning the defensive side of the NHL game, but some amazing zone exits. He can find guys with the puck. He can bring it up by himself, Lohrei-esque, and is going to be a contributor offensively on the second power play unit. Andrew Peeke will likely be his defensive partner. Another solid guy that they brought in from Columbus. You look at committing to Joonas Korpisalo for a few years. You are committing to Andrew Peeke here for a few years, as he was acquired prior to the trade deadline with 3 years left on his deal, I believe, at 2.75. So he's going to be a mainstay in the lineup. Your seventh defenseman, likely going to be Parker Witherspoon. He stepped in, played in the playoffs last year, and very effective in that depth seventh defenseman role, kind of shifting in and out with Kevin Shattenkirk, who doesn't appear will be back, has yet to find a job around the NHL. So really no surprises on the back end, unless, again, somebody really impresses. Maybe Ian Mitchell proves that he belongs on the NHL lineup. Alec Regula was injured, I believe, recently, so he won't be able to grab a spot. But there really should be no surprises for the Boston Bruins here on the blue line. Just looking at their training camp roster, I don't see Drew Bavaro or Frederick Brunet, Michael Callahan grabbing a spot. I'm excited to see Jackson Edward and Loki Johansson, seeing what they can do. Jordan Osterley is a guy that brings some NHL experience. Maybe he can grab a spot on the NHL roster, but I think it's pretty well set with those 7 guys. The big thing on the training camp roster, of course, is the absence of Jeremy Swayman, and hopefully that's rectified as soon as today. No real surprises up front either. Only the one PTO this year, and that is Tyler Johnson. So that's a quick training camp preview for you. Obviously, we hope Swayman is signed today and that he is a participant in the on-ice activities beginning tomorrow. And like I said, Sweeney, Montgomery, set to address the media here around lunchtime today. So I will recap what we learned from them on tomorrow's podcast, hopefully break down a Swayman deal if and when something breaks. I'll do some instant reaction on the YouTube page, so please do subscribe to Locked On Boston Bruins over there so that you don't miss a thing. The big thing to watch in training camp is up front. Who grabs that second line right wing spot? Is Tyler Johnson good enough to earn himself a deal with the Boston Bruins? What about Matt Poitras? Is he going to need a bit of seasoning in the AHL? He wasn't eligible to do so last year. He is now. As a 20-year-old, maybe it's best to ease him back in after that major shoulder surgery down in the AHL. Georgi Merkulov, any other AHL guys going to be able to grab a spot? I think, like I said, the lines, I think, are going to be what I predicted. We'll have to see how things shake out here over the course of training camp leading up to the October 8th season opener against the Florida Panthers. Thank you so much for taking some time to listen today, friends. I hope you're all doing well. Please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you here again on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.